Next up on the chopping block, as it were, is the Kinzigtalbahn Frankfurt am Main to Fulda, one of the 3 base routes in Train Sim World 5. At 64 miles, or 103 kilometres, this is the longest of the 3, but it was the one for which I was the least excited because I had never heard of this line prior to its announcement as a TSW add-on. And if you do like the Kinzigtalbahn DLC, that's fine by me, and if mine turns out to be an unpopular opinion, so be it. The standard edition of TSW5 costs $71.49 NZD at full price on Steam, but if you get the free starter pack or the UK or US regional editions, then the full price for the Kinzigtalbahn as a conventional route add-on is 57 New Zealand dollars. This really does beg the question as to why the routes are so goddamn expensive these days. As for the included rolling stock, the Kinzigtalbahn comes with an all-electric roster featuring the Deutsche Bahn BR114, BR146-2, BR193 Vectron, BR411 ICE-T, and BR423. 3 of these have already appeared in previous add-ons, while the ICE-T and BR114 are new additions to the game. However, the BR114 is barely a new addition because she looks borderline identical to the BR112 and BR143, which have already been in the game for 3 and 6 years respectively. From what I can tell, the BR114 only differs from the BR143 by way of a slightly higher top speed of 160 km per hour instead of 120. As for the sounds, these have not changed. And here's a comparison between the 3 engines' cab interiors, starting with the BR114, then the BR112, which comes with the Hamburg to Lübeck route, and finally the BR143, which comes with Ruhr-Sieg Nord, Nahverkehr Dresden, and Tauern to Ramp. The BR411 ICE-T is one of 3 trains in the Intercity Express family with tilting functions. The others are the BR415, a 5-car variant of the ICE-T, and the BR605 ICE-TD, a 4-car diesel variant, although the BR605s were all withdrawn by 2017 after years of poor reliability. Thinking back to the BR411, this is a 7-car EMU that first entered service in 1999, with 59 examples of this variant having been built. As for why the 5-car variant isn't included in TSW as well, I have no idea. This is the second time the BR146-2 has been reused in another route after her debut appearance with Main Spessartbahn, but this time, Dovetail ported over the horn sound from the Österreichische Bundesbahn in Class 1116. As for the Doppelstockwagen coaches, these are exactly the same ones that we've already seen recycled and resold in at least 8 routes now, Kinzigtalbahn being the 9th. Regardless of whatever reason DTG may have for reusing these coaches so many times, it's still annoying to essentially buy the same rolling stock over and over again. I suppose there's at least one saving grace where the BR146-2 is concerned, namely her distinctive motor sound, although it doesn't hold a candle to the Österreichische Bundesbahn in Class 1116 Taurus, which comes with the Semmeringbahn. At this rate, I'm considering not buying any future German routes if they include the same old Dostos again. Wanting to see other variants of double-decker German coaches in TSW should not be too much to ask. As for the BR193 Vectron, she is not a new addition to TSW, having first appeared in the Railpool Grey livery as an add-on for Nahverkehr Dresden back in September 2023, when TSW4 was released. This time, the locomotive is supplied in the Deutsche Bahn Red livery, and she's used to haul freight trains along the Kinzigtalbahn. There are 3 different types of freight wagon included with this route, and although I'm not at all familiar with German freight trains, I swear these wagons have all been reused from previous routes. Lastly, we come to the BR423 electric multiple unit, and the best word I can think of to describe this thing is shambolic. This EMU is reused from the München to Augsburg route of 2020, albeit with slight alterations where the decals are concerned, but curiously, no RMV logo, and yet the RMV logo does appear on the ticket machines. In real life, the S-Bahn Rhein-Main units do not have the same refurbished interior as their counterparts in München, and I question why Dovetail thought it was a good idea to reuse the München variant instead of modelling an accurate BR423 for this region. Unlike the original from München to Augsburg, this one actually has working passenger information screens, but the real S-Bahn Rhein-Main units apparently don't even have this particular PIS style. Apart from the door chimes, the sounds haven't changed from the München variant, leaving us with the wrong traction inverter sounds for what's supposed to be the S-Bahn Rhein-Main variant. This is now the second time DTG have reused the München BR423 in another DLC. The first was for the New Journeys expansion pack of February 2022, where they gave her S-Bahn Köln decals and included a new timetable for the Köln to Aachen route, but they didn't bother changing the interior. I suppose it's a good thing that there's any depiction of the S-Bahn Rhein-Main services at all, but that should not excuse all the inaccuracies. There's a bug on the München to Augsburg route involving the BR423. When you go to pick a timetable mode service with this thing, only the Frankfurt variant will show up in the list instead of the München version. This means that, when the service loads in, the front unit is incorrect for the route while the rear unit is correct. There is a workaround of sorts, where you can spawn on foot at München Hakebrücke or any other S-Bahn service start point, and take over the AI train when it arrives. But that doesn't make the bug with the München variant not appearing in the aforementioned list any less annoying. How it even happened in the first place is anyone's guess, and I doubt it'll be fixed anytime soon if Dovetail's infamously rare bug fixing is anything to go by. You can also get a FlixTrain variant of the BR193 Vectron, which comes with the Talbot coaches. Apparently those are a new addition to the game. This pack was exclusive to the deluxe and special editions of TSW5 during the pre-order phase, but is now available as a normal locomotive add-on. As for what FlixTrain even is, it launched in 2018 and operates low-cost long-distance services throughout Germany. This operator is a welcome addition to the game, despite being in what is essentially yet another overpriced gameplay pack. The full price is 25 New Zealand dollars, and come to think of it, this is the second TSW iteration in a row for which Dovetail has made the Vectron a separately sold add-on after being a deluxe edition exclusive. And the FlixTrain engine being a separate purchase is even weirder when you remember the other Vectron, the Deutsche Bahn red one, that already comes with the Kinzigtalbahn itself. Besides her livery, the FlixTrain BR193 differs from the Railpool and Deutsche Bahn variants by way of only having 2 pantographs instead of 4. This is because she's only equipped to run in Germany, while the Deutsche Bahn and Railpool variants often run cross-border services into neighbouring countries. The cab details are also different across each of the 3 variants. This locomotive doesn't layer onto any routes other than the Kinzigtalbahn, where she only has 6 playable services in timetable mode, but this is apparently realistic. I don't recall seeing the amount of FlixTrain services ever mentioned, let alone even alluded to, in any of the promotional material for TSW5. If I remembered that correctly, then it's almost as if the devs wanted to hide how little you can actually do with this locomotive. Much like the situation with WCML London to Milton Keynes and the Class 390, I think the FlixTrain Vectron should have been included with the base Kinzigtalbahn routes instead of being sold separately. To be fair, I do still like the Vectron in general, and the bright green livery is a nice change from the usual Deutsche Bahn liveries, but this is still a very poor show given how much DTG tried to hype it up. And the last time I felt this badly ripped off by a TSW add-on was when I bought the ScotRail Class 158. The rest of timetable mode features 31 playable services for the BR411 ICE-T, 98 services for the BR114, the same list for the BR146-2, then 132 for the DB Red BR193, 74 for the BR423, and 95 with the Doppelstockwagen cab car leading either a BR114 or BR146-2. The BR423s are only drivable on the short section from Offenbach Ost to Hanau Hauptbahnhof as part of the S8 or S9 services, but you can also see them on AI-only services at Frankfurt Süd and Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof, the latter seeing S7 trains terminate at the above-ground platforms instead of using the city tunnel. Additional layers are available for motive power from other German or Austrian add-ons, and the relevant packs you'll need to activate these layers are as follows: Kassel to Würzburg, Semmeringbahn, S-Bahn Vorarlberg, Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr, Niedertalbahn, Maintalbahn, Ruhr-Sieg Nord, Link Rheinstrecke, Bremen to Oldenburg, the Deutsche Bahn BR363, specifically the standalone DB Red add-on for RSN, and the original BR101, not the expert version. These extra services are a mix of playable and AI only, and more details about which specific motive power you'll see on the Kinzigtalbahn can be found in Dovetail's pre-release article for this route. The amount of time needed to complete a full-length run on this route depends on your stopping pattern. The slower local services with the BR114 or BR146-2 take at least 88 minutes to complete, while the ICE-T only takes between 52 and 62 minutes because her runs are usually non-stop. Meanwhile, the FlixTrain services only go as far as Frankfurt Süd, so you won't see them at Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof. Strangely, the BR411 ICE-T doesn't layer onto Schnellfahrstrecke Kassel to Würzburg or any other TSW routes that feature ICE services. In any case, her schedule on the Kinzigtalbahn may be realistic for all I know, but it's still a disappointingly low number of services given how much DTG were trying to hype up this route and the ICE-T. As an aside, there was a really weird voiceover in the LZB tutorial that sounded way too unnatural to be a real human being. If it really is an AI voice, then why the hell is Dovetail using AI voices now? The timetable for S-Bahn services suffers from the same problem as the London Overground Watford DC line, part of the WCML South Pack, in the sense that this one has unrealistically long gaps too. It doesn't help that, in this route's case, you can only drive the BR423 for around 13 minutes at a time. The S-Bahn tunnel under central Frankfurt should have been included, even if only to increase the amount of time one could spend with this unit. The scenery is fine, I guess, and I especially like the hilly terrain between Wechtersbach and Fulda, but it's nothing to write home about. I've noticed a few areas where there's a mistake or the scenery quality is just tacky. For example, this area just west of Mülheim-Dietersheim station, this field at Wertheim where it's the usual story of a flat 2D texture and no proper foliage, and this tree that's placed too close to the track at Mülheim. As for the station modelling, I think it's decent, for the most part. 3 stations in particular stand out to me, namely Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof for its huge overall roof, Offenbach Ost for its purple canopies that remind me of Bourneville on the cross-city line, and Vechtersbach for this unique spiral wheelchair ramp next to platform 1. Meanwhile, up at Fulda, I think the station model is unchanged from what we saw on the Kassel to Würzburg route. I have no intention of reviewing that route anytime soon, if at all. For whatever reason, you can't fast travel to most of the stations between Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof and Hanau Hauptbahnhof, nor can you spawn on foot at any of the intermediate stations on that section, except for Frankfurt Süd and Offenbach Hauptbahnhof. Those smaller S-bahn stations don't have any of those route task thingies either, and by route tasks, I mean things like placing route maps and restocking first aid kits. But why this game even has these sorts of collectibles at all is anyone's guess. I noticed a narrow gauge track at Vechtersbach station. Further research tells me that this is the starting point for a 600mm gauge railway that runs for 7.5 kilometres to Bad Orb. It originally opened as a standard gauge line in 1901, then closed in 1995, but it was converted to 600mm gauge and reopened as a tourist railway in the early 2000s. I think TSW is long overdue for a narrow gauge German route at this point, as it would break up the monotony of all the standard gauge electrified lines. There are multiple bits of floating track on the line between Rodenbach and Wolfgang, not to mention another case just east of Frankfurt Süd. This is something I would expect to see on the ancient Great Western Main Line or Somerset and Dorset routes in TS Classic, not a brand new Train Sim World route released in September 2024. By default, the BR114's destination display only shows the destination station and no route number, but a patch to fix this issue is available on the Train Sim community website. Meanwhile, there's a major glitch on one of the services for the ICE-1 layered in from Kassel to Würzburg, specifically the 1148 Fulda to Frankfurt. You can't play this service because, for some reason, it starts past a red signal, so it's an instant game over. That doesn't test games for you. I was getting frequent lagging and stuttering while playing on the Kinzigtalbahn. The frame rate only averaged between 35 and 50 FPS, and occasionally got up to 60, but not much better than that. But then it plummeted to an appalling 14 to 21 FPS on the approach to Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof. My computer meets and exceeds the recommended requirements for TSW5, so the game shouldn't be performing as badly as this, and I can't afford an even more powerful computer. Frankfurt Dresden is a similarly busy route, but it generally runs smoother than the Kinzigtalbahn. Out of the box, Frankfurt to Fulda is one of the worst performing routes in my collection, and it's just as bad as how New York to Trenton was when the updated timetable was first released. And while I did try putting -DX12 in launch options, it didn't improve the performance all that much, if at all. The recent post-release patch does fix a lot of things on the core TSW5 routes, but there's no mention of optimization improvements to the Kinzigtalbahn in the changelog, posted on the Dovetail Live forums. It's all well and good that the patch is here, but there's a very long list of fixes in that changelog, and the fact that TSW5 was allowed out to release with all these problems initially unfixed really does say a lot about Dovetail games and their practices. The problems mentioned in that changelog should have been fixed before the blasted game was even released. The Kinzigtalbahn add-on kind of comes across as Dovetail attempting to recreate the success of Frankfurt Dresden, and even though this newer route had a great potential, and the service variation is pretty good, the experience has been ruined by the route's linearity, abysmal performance, the inaccurate recreation of the S-bahn Rhein-Main BR423, the other reused motive power, and the FlixTrain Vectron being a complete rip-off. A reminder that her full price is 25 New Zealand dollars. It goes without saying that DTG shouldn't be charging so much money for so little content. I would honestly recommend just getting the free starter pack if you don't want to bother with any of the base routes but still want to upgrade to TSW 5. But there's an elephant in the room in the form of the free starter pack being set to expire in early 2025 instead of being a permanent thing. Making the free upgrade temporary was yet another confusing decision on Dovetail's part. Each of the base routes in Trains in World 5 is very disappointing in their own unique ways, but I shouldn't be surprised at this point. Although you would have thought that Dovetail would have really tried to pull out all the stops for something as major as a release of a new core iteration of the game. In any case, my initial rating for the Kinzigtalbahn is a 4 out of 10, but this may change in the future. I shouldn't have to clarify this, but I feel like I still have to. As harsh as it can be sometimes, none of my criticism of TSW products is ever intended as a personal attack on the developers. Come to think of it, that wouldn't even make sense. How can constructive criticism of a product possibly be interpreted as someone personally attacking the people who made it? In any case, I've been playing TSW since 2019 and I really don't want this game to die. But if these silly sods from Chatham keep releasing subpar, rushed/unpolished or overpriced add-ons on such a frequent basis, thus angering or pushing away more and more customers, then they should only have themselves to blame when the circus tent inevitably comes crashing down, whenever that may be. One side of me thinks I should continue to take one for the team for the sake of providing consumer advice and warning people of this game's many flaws, but the other side thinks that I should just give up on TSW at some point, especially since DTG don't seem to have any intention of changing their practices for the better, no matter how often people try to voice their constructive criticism of the game. Anyone would think that the devs pay more attention to the people who always blindly sing their praises, still buy every add-on they release, regardless of its quality, and try to defend, or make excuses for them, while dismissing constructive criticism as mindless complaining. In any case, the Dovetail higher-ups should be ashamed of themselves.